Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is your host, Joseph Hastings. I am joined by the excellent Matt Connolly, and we have a pretty interesting game to talk about with you all today. Of course, I'm talking about Clemson versus Georgia Tech, or as I like to call it, the game that would not end. This game had a lightning delay. This game had injuries, cramps. It had referees, interjecting a lot, targeting call reviews. So there was a lot to discuss. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to talk about it with Matt Connolly, who knows the Clemson Tigers football team as well as anyone on the Clemson beat. Matt, what were your overall takeaways from Saturday's game in which Clemson won 14-8?
Yeah, when I left the house this morning, I wasn't expecting to be getting home after 1 a.m. Or Saturday morning. I didn't think I'd get home after 1 a.m. Sunday morning. So long day for sure. I think just kind of the way it's been all year, honestly. I mean, the defense doing a lot of good things, doing, its part, completely shutting Georgia Tech down for the most part, keeping them out of the end zone again. There were a few plays on the back end where some guys ran free, but for the most part, you really had to be happy if you're Brent Venables and Dabo with the way the defense played. But on the other side, I think just the offensive struggles, the coaching staff, Tony Elliott said that they really confused them or not confused, but kind of threw them off guard with what they running basically rushing three, dropping 8 into coverage and kind of playing a cloud defense and trying to keep everything in front of them and not allow any big plays. And so, the key to having success against that kind of defense is just running it down their throats and establishing the run. And Clemson did that some, but not as much as it needed to, not as consistently as it needed to. Finish up with less than 4 yards per carry. So, just a couple of my takeaways from the game. Continue to be impressed by the defense and continue to expect more from the offense, and just not getting it at this point of the year like I thought it would.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with everything that you said. For me, the big takeaway is that Clemson has a playoff contending defense. This is, I would argue, a top 2 defense. Some would say not number 2. It's number 1. But the offense is bordering top 25 at best right now, based on what we've seen these 3 games. And honestly, I can't attribute it to any one person. I can't attribute it to the play calling. I can't attribute it to DJ. I can't attribute it to the offensive line. I think it's been a culmination of a lot of different variables going on. The offensive line had its issues, especially against Georgia. DJ sometimes in the pocket has looked a little frazzled, hasn't looked completely 100% confident, missing some throws that, he probably normally would make, and he has been making, leading up to the season. And then also just the timing of the routes with the wide receivers. There was one play, and, Matt, you'll probably break it down in your film review this week, where it appeared to be a bubble screen where a wide receiver on the left side of the field should have dropped back behind the line of scrimmage, caught a pass from DJ, and gone up the field. DJ looked to his left, didn't see anyone, and just ran the ball a few yards down. It wasn't a design run, obviously. He looked to his left, to the wide out. So there appears to be some confusion going on. The timing of the routes aren't there. I don't know. The offense just isn't operating on all cylinders. But I'm glad that you mentioned that they tried to establish a run game. They had nearly 160 yards on the ground. Will Shipley, I'm going to say this, you probably would agree, he's definitely Clemson's number 1 running back, should be the starting running back going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And part of what happened with the offense, they did some good things. I mean, it wasn't pretty a lot of times, but they did do some things well. They did establish the run, some, not as much as I think that they needed to when you have the defense that Georgia Tech was playing, but they did have some success on the ground, and particularly Will Shipley and DJ Uiagalelei got going a little bit in the second half as well. But then you put the ball on the ground, so you're driving to go make it a 2-score game and kind of take control, and then DJ fumbles and gives Georgia Tech the ball back, and then Shipley fumbles at the end of the game, and now Georgia Tech gets one more chance to try to take the lead and win there at the end. So just so many mistakes, when things didn't go well often, and then when they did, usually Clemson ended up shooting itself in the foot. So it's been a recurring theme all year. I mean, I think last week against SC State, Clemson put the ball on the ground 4 or 5 times and was fortunate to get all of those back but one. But that's just something that you can't make a habit of as you go throughout the season and the competition gets harder. So I think that this was a game I really felt like we would learn a lot about the offense. I think the Georgia game, it was understandable to kind of have some issues playing against that defense in the opener with so many new pieces. The South Carolina State game, I really didn't feel like we learned a ton just because it's an FCS opponent and the level of competition is not there. But I really thought, against Georgia Tech, a not great ACC team. I mean, they opened the year losing to Northern Illinois, but it's still a team that Jeff Collins is trying to build up and have some success and entering year three now. I think is a decent middle of the pack ACC team, and just to struggle the way Clemson did offensively, to not be able to get any push consistently in the running game, I think is concerning moving forward for sure if you're a Clemson fan. And I think too. God, just we heard all off season the offensive line is so much better and deeper. We heard about all these receivers and getting those guys the ball and getting them out in space. Just a lot of things I think that aren't necessarily coming true that you would kind of think. I mean, outside of Justin Ross, really no receivers got involved. I think maybe Ngata had a couple catches and Ladson had one, and that was pretty much it. EJ Williams, I don't even think had a target. So just it's a deep receiving core. We heard a lot about it, but just hasn't done a whole lot this year. It hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities either. So I asked Dabo about that after the game, if you can try to find a way to get those guys the ball. And he said, really, with the coverage Georgia Tech was playing, they just didn't think anything was there on the outside. But man, when that's the case, you've got to be able to establish the run and bust out 5, 6, 7 yards of carry, and just wasn't happening today.
All right, so I'm glad you brought that up, because in my opinion, the biggest concern right now is that Clemson doesn't have an identity on offense. This isn't a team that's going to move defensive linemen around in the trenches, just do whatever they want and hit the ground running with their run game. They're not a team that airs the ball out too much as well. I mean, even prior to this game, I know you talked about how Georgia Tech came at them with a little bit of a surprise with how many players that they dropped back to prevent the deep pass. But, how many deep balls did we see thrown against Georgia, against SC State, 25 plus yards down the field? We're just not seeing that. So what is this team's identity after 3 games? I'm not seeing it. It appears to me, based off what we saw against SC State and against Georgia Tech, that they want to run the ball. They're going to specifically use Will Shipley as their number one running back going forward. I think that's the case. He had 21 rushes for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns against Georgia Tech. He's the number one option. But is that offensive line good enough to go up against Georgia again and move them around? Because against Georgia, Clemson couldn't run the ball. They were not able to get the ball rolling. Do they want to get DJ out running the ball a little bit more and maybe use him and use him with some options, with whether he has the option to give it to Will Shipley or Kobe, or take it himself? So I think the biggest concern right now, 3 games in, we don't know what the identity of the offense is.
Yeah, I agree with that. And with DJ, he started running some in the second half, and then he put the ball on the ground, and that's something that Dabo said was a concern going into the game, just with his ball security and kind of how he had carried it the previous week against SC State. He was kind of being careless with it. And that was something that they tried to coach up. And then, he goes out today and is reaching for extra yardage and has the ball knocked away. So definitely something there that they have to clean up. I'm also not sure, DJ's a big guy, 250-pound quarterback, but I'm also not sure how many shots you want him taking over and over again as the year goes along. So, I think, Clemson doesn't feel great about its backup quarterback situation, even with Tyson Puvachon back. So I think that you still need to, it doesn't matter who your backup quarterback is. You don't want to get your starting quarterback hurt. So I just think that they need to be careful, some too, running him maybe too much. I think it's a balance you have to play. But man, I think even if Georgia Tech or whoever it is playing coverage and saying, hey, we don't want to beat you on the big play, I still think sometimes you just have to trust your guys to go up and make big plays in coverage. If the coverage is there, I've seen enough from Justin Ross. I'll take Justin Ross sometimes against 2 guys, at least give him a shot to go out there and run around and make a move deep and get by a guy, and just throw it up to him and see if he can make a play. I've seen him do it time and time again in his career. They can't double team everyone. So, maybe some of the drop off game over the middle, try to just find different ways to get guys the ball, bring them in motion, just some kind of more creativity maybe than what we're seeing right now. And yeah, I mean, I know it's hard, when you're trying to find answers and trying to change the game plan on the fly. I know it can be hard, but man, I think you got to just give some of those guys a shot down the field to make some plays.
So once again, completely agree with everything, but we don't want to make this whole show too much, about too much negativity regarding Clemson, their offensive struggles, things like that. Let's talk a little bit about the defense, what we've seen from them thus far. They've only given up 12 total points combined. They gave up 3 against Georgia, 3 against SC State, and 6 against Georgia Tech. That's averaging only 4 points per game that they're allowing in these first 3 games of the season. That's a championship level defense. So you have to be very excited about what you saw if you're a Tigers fan, especially coming off of, what happened last year. Tell me, Matt, what have you seen from this defense that has you encouraged? And also, Brent Venables said last week there's a lot of work to do, and they're not beating their chest just yet. What do you feel like they need to improve on, in case they get to the playoffs yet again this season?
Yeah, I just think it's a relentless group. I just think that, they just keep coming and coming and coming. And, if the offense is struggling and the offense puts them in a bad spot, the defense goes out there and makes a play and gets the offensive ball back and lets them try again. It's just a veteran group. You can see that. I mean, James Skowski on that play there at the end when Georgia Tech's near the goal line, just reading the shovel pass, just read it perfectly, stopped it. I think it's a group that is worn out, is going to need a couple of days to kind of relax and get their feet back under them. I mean, they were worn out. They played a lot of plays today. There were a lot of guys limping off the field during the game, whether it be cramps or just bumps and bruises. I think that understandably those guys are going to need to get rested up and get ready to go before next week. So, wouldn't be surprised to see Skowski or maybe a couple of the other veterans get veteran days. I thought, it was good to see some young guys get in there and play well. That's something that they feel really good about their depth. And so whether it be Barrett Carter coming in, Levante Bentley's a little more experienced, but he steps in with Balin Spector out, just really steps up and has a great game, leads the team in tackle, had a couple of tackles for loss as well. So I think it's just the depth showed today, but just keeping the team out of the end zone again. I mean, just, 3 straight games without allowing a touchdown. It's just insanely hard to do, whether you're playing Georgia, SC State, Georgia Tech, whoever it is, or even, middle school team. I mean, it's hard to come out there and keep a team out of the end zone and just not have any kind of fluke play or any bust that results in a touchdown. So, there were things to improve for sure, particularly I think in the back end. Georgia Tech got loose a couple of times and Yates got outside a couple of times and made some plays with his legs, extended plays, finding receivers downfield. But overall, you've got to be thrilled with the way the defense has played so far this year.
No doubt about it. And another positive takeaway I'll say is that Clemson has had some early season tests. You want to get these tests out early on in the season and, try to find your offensive identity, try and figure out where you need to work on in terms of maybe play calling, switching it up. You want to get those issues out now and address them instead of later on in the season, them popping up. So you get to play Georgia, you get to see the offensive struggles that they obviously had, get to go up against Georgia Tech, see that the passing game still isn't developing, what needs to be worked on, how do they need to approach practice differently, film room differently, those things. So I think it's encouraging that they're getting it out now and that they're 2-1 and that their only loss was to the number 2 team in the country. So, as long as they win the rest of their games, win the ACC championship, I think you can expect Clemson in the playoffs once again. And that brings me to my next point. Do you think Clemson is a playoff caliber team right now based off what we've seen? And if they are they winning more than one game or are they a one and done?
And I appreciate your optimism. I think they're going to have the way this offense is playing right now, I just think they're going to have some trouble as the year goes along. I'm kind of in wait and see mode before I think Clemson's ready to go undefeated and be a playoff team potentially. I think NC State coming up this week going on the road for the first time, it's going to be tough, particularly when you have an offense that's clearly not clicking the way you would hope it is as you're getting ready to go have your first road test. So, kind of like what you said earlier, I think defensively, this group is definitely playoff caliber and is just about as good as anyone in the country. But offensively, there's just a lot of work to do for me to be ready to say that this team's ready to go to the playoff and have a chance to make some noise. I just need to see some improvement before I'm ready to say that. So, I think from what I've seen so far this year, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Clemson drops a game or two in the regular season. I don't think NC State's going to be a pushover. I mean, I think that I think Clemson's probably going to win the game, find a way to win. We'll get into that later in the week as well, kind of what all they're going to have to do to win that game. But it's hard to have a ton of confidence right now with what we saw against Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I think the only reason why I personally have optimism that they can still win out and win the ACC championship is just based on how that defense is playing. That defense is playing lights out. And when you have a team that can go in and pretty much keep the opposing offense out of the end zone, that's demoralizing for that opposing offense. And honestly, this defense is strong-willed. It's got veteran leadership mixed with some youth in there too. I mean, for Brent Venables to trust Barrett Carter fourth down and in a couple of yards, to pretty much prevent the game from going into overtime, that showed a lot to me. This group is definitely one that's battle tested with James Kowski, Nolan Turner. You have a couple of great leaders there that Dabo talked about in last week's press conference. So as long as you have a defense like that, in my opinion, you can do anything. I follow the NFL a lot. The Baltimore Ravens, in their 2000 championship run, didn't have any offense to work with. They had Trent Dilfer as their quarterback. He was pretty much a game manager, but the defense was that elite. And I definitely believe Clemson's defense is number 2, if not number 1 in the country. So with that, I believe you can win any game that you go up against. Now, if you get to Alabama, where Alabama is going to expose you, maybe get a couple of touchdowns, get a couple of cheap touchdowns with Bryce Young there, then you'll run into some problems. But looking at the rest of their slate, I just don't see a team being offensively potent enough to to give Clemson's defense too much troubles. But we'll see as the season progresses. I think this game was. I don't even know what to make of it. It was so up and down. It wasn't consistent. There wasn't a real flow that was established by either team. So hard to take a lot from this game. But yes, the offensive struggles they absolutely remain. And before ending this podcast, the show here, Matt, are there any other final thoughts that you'd like to share regarding Clemson? The 2021 season outlook, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Pitt, I think, was a team that I thought would challenge Clemson. And I still think they can, but they go and lose today to Western Michigan. I mean, the ACC just had a awful day. So it's not a conference right now that looks like it has anyone really ready to challenge Clemson necessarily. And you mentioned, Clemson can beat anyone with the way their defense is playing, which is true. But my counterpoint would be with the way the offense is playing, I feel like they could lose to just about anyone. I mean, you're talking about a Georgia Tech team that lost at home to Northern Illinois to open the year. And, Clemson scores 14 points in 4 quarters. So it had 7 through three quarters. So I just, it's early in the year. I'm sure that there will be some improvements, but I just want to see a little more from the offense before I'm ready to say playoff caliber. But you're right. They could definitely get there as the year goes along. They've got not the toughest schedule in the world. And, the NC State game is a really big one. I know that Raleigh that's a tough place to play, man. Raleigh will be fired up. They'll be ready to go. So should be a really fun one. Encourage y'all to check out all our coverage at clemsonsports.com throughout post-game coverage from Georgia Tech, as well as preview coverage throughout the week, looking ahead to NC State. Running a great deal right now, $10 gets you a year of insider access, team coverage, as well as Joseph's great recruiting coverage. Had a ton of updates on some top 22 and 2023 prospects. So come join us at clemsonsports.com. Come check it out. And that's about it for me.
And Matt, you just did my job there. I was about to go in and ramble on about the great deal that we have, which is just honestly a fantastic deal. $10 for a year or $1 for 4 months. You really can't beat that. But yes, go check us out on clemsonsports.com. See all of the exclusive content that we have, premium access to our message boards, which is always great. Some awesome conversations going on there. And subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We'd love to for you all to click that like button, hit subscribe, and and comment as well. Let us know what you thought about the show. And until next time, I'm Joseph Hastings. For Matt Connolly, we're signing off. Thank you.